Megan, and I'm one of the resident science nerds here at the Math Science Innovation Center. Recently, on our Ask a Nerd feature, Kennedy asked two questions rolled into one. The questions were, what is lighter than helium? And how far up can a helium balloon float? Well, I'm going to give you the answers to those. I'm going to answer the second question first because the answer is simpler and doesn't involve as much scientific depth as the first question. When you watch a helium balloon float up into the sky, there doesn't seem to be any limit as to how high it can go, but there is, and that limit is based on the strength of the balloon material and the air pressure change as you go up higher in the atmosphere. The higher you go, the lower the air pressure is. You've heard people say that as you go higher in altitude, the air gets thinner. That's exactly what happens. There is less air per unit volume. In other words, the air molecules get further apart, which makes the air thinner, and that reduces the air pressure. Then, without as much outside pressure to keep the balloon small, the higher it goes, the bigger it will get. Think of it this way. Since the helium molecules inside the balloon are trapped inside there, as the outside air gets thinner and the outside air molecules get further apart, the helium molecules will try to get further apart from each other too. The only way that can happen is if the balloon gets bigger and bigger until it gets too big and then it will pop. For a typical toy balloon, that would be about 10 kilometers or 6 miles up. The special balloons that weathermen or meteorologists send up can go about 3 times higher, or up to about 30 kilometers or about 18 miles. As a bonus piece of information, the record altitude for a lighter than air balloon is 53.0 kilometers or 32.9 miles. It was a specially designed balloon named BU-60-1, built by the Institute of Space and Astronautical Science, and it was launched on May 23, 2002. It took just over 3.5 hours to reach that altitude. So, if your question had to do with an ordinary toy balloon, the answer would be it would go up about 6 miles before it would pop. Is anything lighter than helium? The quick and short answer is yes. There is one thing lighter than helium, and it's hydrogen, and it's the only thing lighter than helium. But lighter is not really the scientific term that applies here. The correct term would be less dense, or having a lower density. The distinction between lighter and less dense has to do with the fact that weight, for which we use the terms light and heavy, refer to the downward pull on something due to gravity, whereas density refers to how closely packed the molecules are to each other. One thing that makes something heavier than another is that there's more of it. For example, a bowling ball is heavier than a ping pong ball. Obviously, there is more ball to the bowling ball than there is to the ping pong ball. If we had a ping pong ball that was the same size as the bowling ball, their weights, and thus the pull of gravity, might be the same. But think about it. The bowling ball is a solid ball, while the ping pong ball is hollow and filled with air. Even if we made the ping pong ball as big as the bowling ball, would it be as heavy? The answer is no. In fact, the bowling ball is 176 times bigger than a ping pong ball. The ping pong ball would still be mostly air if we made it the same size as the bowling ball, while the bowling ball is completely solid. Kind of a side note, did you know that bowling was first invented by the Egyptians more than 5,000 years ago? And bowling balls were probably made out of stone then. Over the years, they became made of heavy wood, and today they're made of a heavy plastic. So even though our bowling ball and that huge ping pong ball might be the same size, the bowling ball would still be heavier. This leads to the concept of density. Density is the weight, or more specifically the mass, divided by the volume or size. So even though our bowling ball and our huge ping pong ball might be the same size, the bowling ball will be heavier, so its density will be higher. So the huge ping pong ball is heavier than the regular ping pong ball because there's more ball to it. It's bigger. But it still has the same properties as the regular one. That is, its density is still the same as the regular sized ping pong ball. The good news for you is that hydrogen is not only less dense than helium, it's also lighter. One helium molecule weighs about twice as much as one hydrogen molecule does, which means the density of hydrogen is about 1/2 as much as the density of helium. So the answer to your first question is yes, there is something lighter and less dense than helium, and that is hydrogen. Thanks for your question. As you can see, very seldom for an apparently simple question is the scientific answer very simple. That's part of the nerdy funness of science, why scientists love doing science. I know the explanation I gave might seem a little confusing when I just say it to you, but on the Math Science Innovation Center website, mymsic.org, I have put a PowerPoint presentation that goes through the math and shows the concepts visually. It might make the explanation a bit more understandable. Including in that presentation are links to websites that are good references for the topic. Thanks again, and keep on asking questions.